right? Let's have a real chat about June. Everyone thinks of June as this glorious, easy month. Everything's lush, the roses are out, the sun's finally here, and it is. But it's all a minefield. It's the month where tiny mistakes, things that seem insignificant, suddenly spiral. By August, you're looking at a plant and wondering why it's struggling, and the root cause almost always was something that happened right now in June. This isn't about some secret technique. It's about avoiding the traps. The things we all did when we were starting out. It's the month of explosive growth, and with that comes explosive potential for things to run if you're not paying attention. Think of it as the garden's adolescent phase, all legs and hormones and prone to bad decisions if left unsupervised. We're going to walk through the big one, the one mistake that underpins almost everything else that can go sideways this month. It's not about buying fancy new tool. It's about shift in mindset from spring's planting frenzy to summer's careful stewardship. Get this right, and the rest of the season is joy, not battle. The biggest mistake new gardeners make in June is impatience. Plain and simple, it's a kind of panic that sets in when you see those little gaps in the border or that one pot that looks a bit empty. You've come through the long slog of winter and spring, you've done the hard work, and you just want the finished picture right now. So you rush to the garden center, you see all these perfect looking plants blooming their heads off in their little plastic pots, and you buy them. You bring them home, cram them into any available space, and expect them to just carry on. This is where it all starts to unravel. You're buying plants that have been forced into bloom in perfect polytunnel environment, and then you're throwing them into the real world. Honestly, it's the gardening equivalent of sugar rush. It feels great for day, but it leads to crash later on. You end up with plants that are stressed, that don't have the root systems to support that sudden flush of growth, and that are way more susceptible to every pest and disease that comes along. It's false economy of time and effort. Okay, let's talk about water. This seems so basic, but it's where so much goes wrong in June. The mistake isn't just forgetting to water, it's the inconsistency. You get hot, dry week, and you panic water everything every day. Then it rains bit, so you stop completely for a week. Plants hate this. They crave consistency. Newly planted perennial, for example, needs that soil to stay consistently moist while its roots get established. Most people don't realize that quick sprinkle with the hose does more harm than good. It encourages shallow roots that are vulnerable to drying out. You need to give plants really deep, thorough soaking less often. Let the water sink right down. The classic test is to stick your finger 2 inches into the soil. If it's dry at your fingertip, it's time to water, and water the soil, not the leaves. Wet foliage overnight is just an open invitation for fungal diseases like powdery mildew, especially on things like courgettes and phlox. Morning is the best time to water, giving the leaves all day to dry out in the sun. This is the one job that so many people skip, and I swear it makes the biggest difference of all, forgetting to mulch. By June, the soil is finally properly warm, and any bare earth is just a landing strip for weed seeds and a massive evaporation point for moisture. A good 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch, whether it's bark chips, compost, or leaf mold, is like putting lid on your soil. It locks in all that precious moisture from the spring rains. You water far, far less. It's also fantastic weed suppressant. Most annual weed seeds need light to germinate. They block the light, and you've solved 80% of your weeding problem before it even starts. The one mistake people make is piling it right up against the plant stems, which can cause them to rot. Always leave little color of clear space. Most people don't realize it also regulates soil temperature, keeping roots cooler on hot days. Worms and soil microbes absolutely go mad for it, breaking it down and improving your soil structure over time. It's not the most glamorous job, but it's the foundation of low-maintenance, resilient summer garden. Fertilizing blindly is a massive June pitfall. You see all this growth happening and think it needs more food. So you grab that box of all-purpose granular feed and sprinkle it everywhere. Or worse, you keep feeding with a high nitrogen feed like a lawn fertilizer or an early season plant food. Nitrogen promotes lush, leafy green growth. While that's great in spring, in June it can be a disaster for many plants. You'll get massive floppy green growth on your tomatoes, but very few flowers or fruit. Your dahlias will be all leaf and no bloom. You're telling the plant to focus on making leaves at the expense of flowers. This is the month to switch to a high potassium feed, often sold as tomato feed. Potassium is the element that promotes flowering and fruiting. Think of it this way: nitrogen for F shoots, potassium for F roots. A weekly liquid feed with a high potassium fertilizer for anything in a pot or a hanging basket is non-negotiable. For border plants, a slow-release granular feed applied in spring, usually enough, but if things look a bit tired, a liquid feed will give them a much-needed boost without encouraging weak, sappy growth that aphids just love. June is party time for pests. The weather is warm, the growth is soft and sappy, and it's a 5-star buffet for aphids, slugs, and snails. The mistake is not being vigilant. You don't go from one aphid to an infestation overnight, but it can feel like it. You have to get in the habit of checking your plants regularly. Look at the new shoots on your roses, check the undersides of leaves. Most people's first reaction is to reach for a chemical spray, but often overkill and harms beneficial insects. My first line of defense is just my thumb and forefinger. Squish them. If it's a bigger colony, a sharp jet of water from the hose will knock most of them off. For slugs, the old tricks are the best. A ring of wool pellets or copper tape around pots works wonders and encourage predators. I've seen a single ladybug larva clear an entire rose shoot of aphids in an afternoon. By creating a healthy, balanced ecosystem, you let nature do the pest control for you. The key is to act small and act early. Don't wait until your lupins are decimated before you go out on a slug hunt after dark. It's about proactive observation, not reactive panic. This one feels so wrong, which is why so many new gardeners refuse to do it. It's called the Chelsea chop. Around late May or early June, you take certain late flowering perennials like sedums, phlox, heleniums, and asters, and you literally chop them back by about a third to a half. It feels brutal. You're cutting off potential flowers. But what you're actually doing is genius. The plant responds by producing multiple side shoots below the cut, meaning you get a much bushier, sturdier plant that produces far more, albeit slightly smaller flowers. It also delays the flowering by a few weeks. Most people don't realize you can do it selectively. If you have a big clump of phlox, you can chop the front half and leave the back. The back will flower first at its normal height, and then as it fades, the chopped front section will take over, extending your season of color. It completely prevents that awful late summer flopping that plagues so many taller perennials, meaning you don't need to mess around with as many stakes. Honestly, it's one of the best bits of tough love you can give your garden. Staking, the art of making a plant stand up when it wants to fall down. The biggest mistake here is twofold, doing it too late and doing it too rigidly. People wait until their magnificent delphinium or foxglove is bent double after a rainstorm, and then they try to hoist it back up and tie it tightly to a single cane. It never looks right. It looks like the plant is being held hostage. The key is to get your supports in May or June while the plant is still growing. Let it grow up star through star the support, whether it's a grid, a ring, or a cage of twiggy pea sticks. The foliage will quickly hide the support and the plant will look completely natural. The other error is tying stems too tightly. A plant needs to be able to move and flex in the wind. If it's held completely rigid, a strong gust will snap the stem right at the tie. Use soft twine-in, a figure of 8 loop to create cushion gap between the stake and the stem. This allows for movement without abrasion. You'll often see this in old cottage gardens. They use natural-looking hazel or birch branches as supports, which become almost invisible by midsummer. This is another one of those jobs that feels like a chore, but the payoff is immense. Not deadheading. Once a flower fades, the plant's sole mission is to produce seed. It pours a huge amount of energy into that process. If you snip off that faded flower, you trick the plant. It thinks, oh, my attempt to reproduce failed. I must try again. And it pushes out more flowers. It's that simple. With plants like cosmos, dahlias, roses, and salvias, regular, deadheading is the difference between a plant that flowers for 3 weeks and one that flowers for 3 months. Most people just pull off the petals, but you need to trace the flower stalk back too. A leaf node or a side shoot and make a clean cut. This encourages new, strong growth. The failure note here is knowing what star not star to deadhead. Plants like Echinacea or Rudbeckia have fantastic seed heads that provide structure in winter and food for birds. I always leave those standing. Bees absolutely lose their minds over a well-deadheaded salvia bed as it just keeps producing fresh nectar sources for them all summer long. It's the 10-minute job that repays you 100-fold. Let's be honest, nobody likes weeding. But ignoring weeds in June is probably the most catastrophic mistake you can make. The combination of warm soil, summer rain, and long daylight hours means weed growth is absolutely explosive. A few tiny seedlings you ignored last weekend can become a dense light-blocking, nutrient-stealing carpet a week later. The old saying, own year's seeding means 7 years weeding, is painfully true. The mistake, letting it become an overwhelming, soul-destroying task. The secret is little and often. I spend 10 minutes every evening just wandering with A hoe or a hand fork dealing with them as they appear. It's almost meditative. A hoe is your best friend on. A dry day, you just skim the surface and leave the weeds to wither and die in the sun. For perennial nasties like bindweed or ground elder, you have to be more persistent, digging out as much root as you can. Dandelions in the lawn, a special tool makes it easy to pop them out, taproot and all. Most people don't realize that many weeds are also hosts for pests and diseases, giving them a place to multiply before they move on to your prized plants. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about garden health.